All right, let me make sure the camera is working. Everything's going all right as far as that goes. Any second now. Make sure the sound's turned down so I'm not hearing my voice on double. All right. So look, I shaved my head. Finally shaved my head again, trimmed up my beard. I'm looking like Sean Connery. Yeah. So anyway, here we go with another Masters of the Universe Origins unboxing, and this is the Turtles of Grayskull Ninjor. You can see I found that at Ross for $12.99. Frankly, I think that was overpriced by Ross standards, basically, as you can see that like they have a comparable value $24, whereas I believe Turtles of Grayskull retailed for $21. So yeah, probably should have been a little bit less, maybe like $10 or $11. But hey, is it $13? It's still pretty good. Blue White Mario is here and says, "Hi, Alan. What's up? I'm here for you." Well, good to see you. So thanks for stopping by. So yeah, it says Ninjor Devious Dragon. You can see he's got a dragon head, and this is part of the Snake Men, the Reptile Wars subline. And again, it says the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles scour Eternia for Shredder, but find themselves in the middle of King Hiss's plot to make the Snake Men the most powerful force in the universe. And then, just like with Clamp Champ that we opened up on the last episode, we see the cross-alt artwork has Clamp Champ, Leonardo, and Michelangelo, and Ninjor. And I do not have either of the turtles from this wave. Probably won't get them unless I see them for cheap somewhere. Then I might pick them up. But I kind of feel like the 4 turtles that I have are good enough. I like the ones that I have. By the way, I was planning on moving on to the deluxe Turtles of Grayskull figure next. But since I got this guy from Target, got the original concept art version of He-Man from the Sketchbook series. Yeah, see, Sketchbook series. So this guy is going to be the next guy that I open up. I'm pretty excited about that. But then we'll be getting right back to Turtles of the Grayskull with the deluxe figures that I have to open. But yeah, you know my Mark Taylor He-Man figure. He's going to come next. And the Roger Sweet He-Man, because he's got the black hair like the Roger Sweet He-Man had, but he's got the blonde hair like the Mark Taylor one had. So it's the best of both worlds, actually. So here's the artwork on the back with Ninjor fighting against Raphael, Michelangelo, Donatello. I don't see Leonardo around anywhere. I don't know where he's at. And you got Super Shredder up there at the top, which they had him at Ross, but I missed out on him. They had plenty of them, but I didn't have enough money to buy them on that day. And I'm like, there, I got plenty of them. I'm sure I'll be able to get one next time I stop by. But came back, all of them are gone. Every single one of them. I was shocked. So, and this foot soldiers, the King Hiss foot soldiers back there. So let's go ahead and open this guy up. Oh, I should read the little bio on the back. This is a little real quick, one-line bio. Ninjor carries a secret under his hood. He has always been the last Dragon Man of Eternia, hiding from all until the next coming of Serpos. I don't know who Serpos is. Maybe they'll explain that in the mini comic, since he actually comes with this mini comic. And I brought over here the standard Origins version of Ninjor. And a lot of people have asked over the years why Ninjor has the reptile feet and arms when he appears to just be a normal human. But if you look at his eyes, you see he's got like the whites of his eyes are black, and he's got little red irises in them. So he's not quite human, is he? And according to this figure, he's a dragon man. So now the reptile feet and arms kind of make sense, don't they? And this guy, well, he has different feet and arms. But we'll talk more about that when we open them up, which we're just about to do. Let's go ahead and do that. I hope Muffin is doing well. All right. Anyway, so here's the comic book, Blood of the Dragon. And it shows him chasing after Michelangelo. Got Donatello in the background. And he's knocking over Leonardo. because apparently he literally is gigantic. And I guess Mechanic is down there, and Raphael. They're getting kind of trampled on by this creature. So let's go ahead and read the comic book. All right. So there's the first page, establishing shot of Snake Mountain and the turtles apparently falling to their doom. And it says, for centuries, the serpent god Serpos lay dormant, imprisoned within Snake Mountain by the elders of Eternia. I think that might have been something from 2000X, now that I think about it. The Snake Men believe that their lord will return one day and return. The Snake Men believe that their lord will one day return and restore their reign. Throw them in the pit. And then we see the turtles again falling into the pit. And the coming of Serpos is nigh. And then they hit the ground down at the bottom. Oof. Where are we? In the uncharted heart of Snake Mountain. If the legends are true, this is the prison of Serpos. Their protection runes are the only thing standing between us and the ancient god of the Snake Men. And then Michelangelo says, hope they wouldn't want Serpos to ruin our day. Oh, Michelangelo, never change. All right, and then we got King Hiss up here saying, Warden of Serpos, my champions stand at your doorstep. Free the great constrictor, of the cosmos from his unjust incarnation, or suffer our wrath. Lots of those foot soldiers running around. Would have been nice if I could have gotten more than one of those so I can army build them, but whatever. His champions? Do you think he means us? Titan formation, turtles. Who's the Warden of Serpos? King Hiss activated his runes. And then I can't see. Well, I can't see either because that panel's like way too tiny. That's a problem with these. I kind of feel like the artwork is good. I don't want to say it's bad artwork. It's excellent artwork. But it's the sort of thing where, like, this is a guy who actually draws comics, and I think he's used to drawing, like, full-size comics. So it seems a little cramped. Like, the art... If this was printed a full-size page, I could probably tell what was going on. But in the smaller printing, it's a little hard to tell sometimes. And then a wild Ninjor arrives, striking at the turtles from behind, and he leaps into the midst of them. And Clampchamp recognizes him instantly. Ninjor! How dare you disrupt the chamber of Serpos? This intrusion is forbidden. The penalty is death. We were thrown down here by King Hiss. He wants to free Serpos. Help us find a way out so we can defeat him together. The only way out is death. And then he goes at Leonardo. Have it your way, pal. Ninjor, stop! King Hiss is using you. Don't bother. Evil ninjas always got to do things the hard way. I'm just guessing is what Turtle's saying what by like what they're saying, but I'm probably right. It's kind of hard to tell because they're so small, but that seems more like a Raphael thing to say. Michelangelo is standing right next to him. And then, Ninjor turns into his true dragon form. What the? Dragon! The Warden of Serpos arrives. Hit the deck! And you see Mechanic diving out of the way. I would like to get that Mechanic figure. He's pretty cool. And then got, is that Ratlore, I think? And Ratlore and King Hiss. And Ratlore says, what happens if the turtles defeat him, my king? And then King Hiss says, it matters not whether or not the heroes defeat the Warden. The second coming of Serpos is inevitable. And King Hiss is mostly in his human form, but he's got the snake head on instead of the foot ninja head, which makes sense because he's not supposed to be disguised as a foot ninja here, and he didn't come with like the regular human King Hiss head. But I'm kind of the opinion that that's not his real head anyway. He's not like a real guy. He's not like an actual human that turns into serpents. He's serpents that disguise themselves, a group of serpents, as a human. He's kind of like, you know, in the Little Rascals or the Muppets, whenever they would stack them, you know, selves on top of each other, like sit on each other's shoulders, wearing a trench coat and a fedora, trying to pass themselves off as a human. It's just a slightly more realistic disguise than that. So the boys and Clamp Champ and Mechanic are fighting this monstrous Ninjor. He's way bigger than the actual figure would suggest in the comic. Heads up! Look out, Raph! You don't have to ask me twice. And then, is that Michelangelo? I think it's he says dude, so I'm going to say it's Michelangelo. Slip and slide, dude! And he slides in between Ninjor's legs. And then heave now! And you see Leonardo hacks at his leg with his katana. It's kind of violent for a kiddie tie-in toy comic. And then Michelangelo, I think it is. I can't really tell. Go down, will ya? And then Raphael says, or stay up. I don't mind pounding this guy in the face some more. And then Ninjor breathes fire at them. He doesn't seem too talkative when he's in his dragon form, does he? And then Michelangelo says, this guy doesn't know when to give up. And then Super Shredder leaps at Ninjor's head, and Leonardo says, oh no, Shredder! And it is done. And then I guess Shredder like ripped Ninjor's throat out. Ugh. And then Mechanic, I think it is, says, the spell that seals Serpos has been broken. Cave in! And then, what do we have here? Like I said, the artwork's kind of tiny, so it's kind of hard to tell. Super Shredder is also a lot more gigantic than the figure would. They're basically kaiju at this point. Look how small the turtles are next to Super Shredder, who is, you know, again, kind of a normal-sized action figure. If you guys remember the Necroconda, he had the same tail as the Necroconda. But anyway. Serpos, I, King Hiss, have freed you from your prison. I present to you this sacrifice of Outlanders to satiate your hunger. And then Serpos awakens within Shredder. Leo, what do we do? I don't know, Raph. And then Michelangelo says, I have an idea. That's the scariest thing in this comic, is when Michelangelo says, I have an idea. And then there's some of this with this dark green printing that I can't really make out too well. And it says, I am Michelangelo, Ninja Turtle of Earth, and defenders of the secret of what makes New York pizza awesome. Radical secret powers were revealed to me the day I held off my magic nunchaku and said, by the power of Grayskull, I have the turtle power. I'm kind of surprised it took that long for somebody to say that in these comics. and Mikey is all powered up and says, it's all good, dudes. I got this. And Leonardo's like, Mikey? And then Super Shredder says, no, the ritual is not yet complete. And Michelangelo says, yo, Shredhead, I gotta be honest. I liked you better the way you were before. Hey, snake dudes, you want your weird snake god? Now's your chance. Here, you can have him. And tosses Super Shredder back at the Snake Men. And then Leonardo says, hit him with the anti-mutagen. And then Raphael says, hit him. Don't have to ask me twice. And then, and so it was, Shredder was defeated and returned to his human state. The turtles completed their task. Michelangelo's quite proud of himself, and as he should be, because he did a good job ending the threat, and the Shredder is defeated. And then it says, the turtles prevented the Snake Men's reptile war. Serpos was sealed back in his Snake Mountain prison. No trace of the ooze was left behind. The power returned to Grayskull. Although they made new friends and forever allies, Eternia was not their world. Finally, the turtles returned home, and it shows them reuniting with Master Splinter back in the sewers. The end. Oh, wasn't that sweet? So, but we do still have one more Turtles of Grayskull comic book, because the The Skella Shredder figure comes with a comic book, so we'll have that to read in a future episode. But for now, let's get to our actual Ninjor action figure. Take him out of the package, and let's have a look at some of these accessories. So the first accessory, and it's a fairly important one, is we have an extension for the neck. Because as you can see, his head is just straight onto the neck of the action figure in the package. And that's going to be kind of little short, little stubby for a dragon neck. So that'll give us a longer neck for our dragon. That's good. And these wings are held into the back of the package with a rubber tab. And they look pretty much identical to the wings that we'd previous had with the Turtles of Grayskull Hordak figure. I'm pretty sure these are the same exact wings. I don't even think there's any difference in the coloring or the paint. Maybe it's like a slightly different kind of black. I don't know. But it looks like the same kind of semi-translucent red plastic that we got on those wings. Speaking of which, here's Ninjor's other accessory, which is a sword, a katana blade, which is made out of the same kind of translucent red plastic. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be like an energy type of katana. The surprising thing is usually when we get katana in the Origins line, it's this one that's the one that came with Ninjor and Jitsu. And it's different from the vintage Jitsu and Ninjor because it doesn't have the handguard on the wrong side. It doesn't have a handguard at all. But you can see the difference is this is a much more realistically sculpted katana with a more accurate type of handle. This one, the handle is more made to be held by a Masters of the Universe figure than it is to be realistic. This one's more made to be realistic than it is to look like than it is to fit in a Masters of the Universe hand. So it'll be interesting to see how well it does fit into his hand. Lastly, we have the Ninjor figure itself. So let's go ahead and get him out of the package. And of course, he's got a few rubber tabs holding him in. So let's go ahead and cut those off. Snip them with my little snips. All right. And there we go. He is out of the package. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the head so I can place on the neck extender, and then he can have a longer, more dragon-type neck. And damned if I didn't drop his collar on the floor when I was trying to do that. He's got this spiky collar, and it is a loose piece, so do be careful with it. It is not it's supposed to kind of fit over the top of his armor, and it doesn't seem to want to fall off, like just from gravity or whatever. But it's still not on there like incredibly snugly, so be careful with it. So you got this black neck extender. I think I got it on there now. It seems like it's staying on there. It's kind of funny this collar only has 2 spikes on it. I kind of wonder why you'd bother if you're only going to put 2 spikes on it. Now, I don't know if these pieces have been reused in anything else, but these look like new forearms to me. I have not seen these forearms, and I have not seen these hands before. That's not to say they haven't ever been used on anything, but I'm not familiar with them. I haven't seen them before, so they're new for me. And the upper arms look like they're the same upper arms that would have come with Buzz Off or Clawful or somebody like that. And the same with the thighs. And the shins look like to me that they're reused from, well, the upper part of the shins, those are still part of that Buzz Off leg because you can still see some of that little fin that's on those. But the shin parts, the actual shin guards, those look like to me they're reused from the old Keldor figure from the Rise of Evil or whatever that set was called. The set with Keldor and Cronus. So let's go ahead and take them apart in the middle because I want to have a look at this. There's this loincloth piece, this belt piece, and it's kind of unusual because unlike other loincloths and belt pieces that we've seen in this line before, you can see this one is sculpted specifically to fit on excuse me, on this specific waist piece. So it's not really one that you can take off and just put on any other waist piece, at least not without some modification. and he's going to look kind of funny if he doesn't have the belt on. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. We're going to pop this back in, and you can see that there's like a little bit of a lip at the top of his torso. You see that? Where that space is supposed to go. So it's not an optional piece. Like I say a lot of the times, or with the Thundercats figures, it was definitely designed to be an optional piece, but this is not designed that way. And it looks like it's the standard Masters of the Universe torso underneath in black plastic. And the arms and legs are translucent purple. I don't know if you can tell that's translucent, but it is. It's kind of like with the Stranger Things Hordak. It's such a dark color. It's kind of hard for it to be that visible that it's translucent on the camera. But trust me when I say it is. Okay, and I can go ahead and put his dragon head back on since I have the neck extension on. And that seemed to go on a little easier than the neck piece did. So now, see what I'm talking about? It looks more like a proper dragon with the longer neck. And before we talk about the articulation, or before we talk about the accessories, let's talk about the articulation. So Ninjor, despite the all the articulation in that, can't actually look up that far. He can only look up about that far. You can look down a bit further. That kind of makes sense to me because you want to have him like flying over the other characters. So maybe he would be more looking down. But also when he flies forward, you want him to be looking forward, and he can't really do that so well. But what we can do if we want to do that is kind of, technically his neck's backwards now, but that makes for a pretty good, like, him looking forward while he flies at his enemies. So you can get him to do that. It just you have to cheat a little bit. Sometimes you got to cheat a little bit with these things. It's a toy. Use your imagination. I mean, hell, he's got antlers. He's a reptile with antlers. But, I think he's supposed to be more a dragon in like the Asian tradition. So that kind of makes sense. And he does have a hinged jaw. So you can open up his jaw and pretend like he's shooting at fire at the Ninja Turtles or He-Man or whoever. So, and then of course the head rotates all the way around, both where the head meets the neck and where the neck meets the torso. The arms rotate all the way around, but you're going to bump into these big old shin pad or shoulder pads. I don't know why I said shin pads, but it's going to bump into that a little bit. And the arms raise up to the sides about that far. He's got a single joint of articulation at the elbow, which bends up about that far, rotates all the way around, and his arms rotate all the way around at the wrist. And the right wrist has a horizontal hinge on it, and the left wrist has a horizontal hinge on it. So that's how that works. He rotates all the way around at the waist. Ninjor can do the splits no problem, but only about that far. Maybe a little bit of a problem. And Ninjor can kick up about that far, not very far for a ninja, but he is, one of these muscle-bound Masters of the Universe characters, so what do you expect? He's got a single joint of articulation at the knee, bends in about that far, and rotates all the way around. Of course, it does rotate at a bit of an angle, but that's to be expected. And then the shin armor, the boot cut, that rotates all the way around. Foot points down about that far, foot points up about that far, and then the foot rotates all the way around where the foot meets the ankle. And these are like just kind of typical Skeletor type feet that we see a lot on these figures, like the Filmation web store has feet like this, and some of the other figures. So anyway, that's it for the articulation. Let's talk about his accessories now. And we already put the neck piece on there, so that's one down. And then next we got these big old wings, because he is a dragon. He needs to have wings. So there we go. He looks pretty badass and intimidating like that, doesn't he? Now, one thing that I think would have been great to have as an accessory in this, and you might remember me mentioning this with the regular Ninjor figure, is he did not come with an alternate head. He only came with this head. Now, the original Ninjor came with a fabric gi and hood, and this being Origins, they decided to give him a molded plastic gi, and his hood is molded to his head and not removable. And I'd said at the time it would have been nice to give him an unmasked head so you could still simulate the unmasking that you could do with the original figure. But they did not do that. They did do that with the classics figure, so that was cool. And they did have kind of a nod to the unmasked face in the Masterverse figure, but of course that in itself was a mask because, like I said, he's not really human. So anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, so he does not have a human head at all. He just has this dragon head. And I think it would have been nice if they'd have given you a human head, like an unmasked human head, so he could have something that would look kind of like a human disguise. Or even just giving him the masked ninja head again, whatever. But no, he's just got the dragon head, and the dragon head's pretty cool, so I'm not going to complain about it. So, like I said, these are new hands. Let's see how well he can hold this sword. Get the sword into his hand. And he actually holds it quite well, so that's good. But how well could a regular Masters of the Universe figure hold it? Well, I happen to have Faker over here, the animated Faker. So let's try to put the sword into his hand and see how well he can hold it. Now, if I have him hold it sideways like this, he holds it fairly well. But it seems like it's fairly thick as far as like trying to get the standard. So I don't think this is going to be a sword that can be held very well by any of the standard Masters of the Universe figures. This is a sword that is exclusive to this version of Ninjor, as far as that goes. So it's going to have to be his sword. You can't really give it to anybody else, but that's fine because it's a cool sword and it fits him really well. So Ninjor is a figure that has always been the character's always been fairly popular, and even though he came out during kind of like the waning years of Masters of the Universe, and he was in one of the last waves to come out. I don't remember if it was the last wave, but it was definitely one of the last waves to come out. He's always been a character that's had a bit of a cult following. And I think maybe even older kids that were kind of getting out of Masters of the Universe at the time, kind of starting to outgrow it, moving on to other more mature toy lines, I guess, or just outgrowing toys in general. But even a lot of kids that were like my age still thought Ninjor was pretty cool. And I wasn't really buying that many He-Man figures anymore anyway. I don't even think it was necessary that I was starting to outgrow Masters of the Universe. But Masters of the Universe was just kind of starting to skew a little more kiddie. Like when I was first buying it before the cartoon, it still had a bit of an edge to it. And that was something that it did not have so much when we got into the latter part of the 80s. I think kind of part of the reason I liked the movie so much is because it kind of brought some of that edge back. But Ninjor was a character that I kind of felt like he was kind of like had some of that edge to him. A lot of those figures in that wave did, because Scareglow would be another one where I kind of felt like it was bringing back some of that edge that used to be in the line. That was why Mark Taylor left Masters Universe in the first place, is because he felt like it was starting to lose some of its edge. But yeah, I kind of think Ninjor was one of those characters that still a lot of the older kids kind of dug and kind of maybe kept us around a little bit longer than we might have been around eventually. Of course, like I said, the line was almost out of gas at that point, and it would be ending pretty soon anyway. But I do think this is a really cool interpretation of Ninjor. And, I'm sure a lot of people thought when they saw this guy is that, he's Ninjor that got mutated. And he does have, like I said, that translucent purple to him, like how the ooze was purple on the cartoon. So that's why a lot of these characters have this translucent purple on them, I think. But no, he's actually not a mutant. This is him as he truly is. And I think that puts a whole new spin on this character, who previously was just, you thought he was human, but he was never human. And if you look at that original figure, if you look at this figure, if you really look at him, you can tell he's not human, but it's a disguise. And unlike King Hiss, who came with a human disguise that you could peel off of him, you had to kind of think about this guy to realize he was wearing a disguise. Well, here he is now without the disguise. And looking just badass. Bobby Wald is here, and he says, what a fun time it was in the 80s coming up with the name of some of these figures that I would love to have been on that team. I'm sure they did have a lot of fun, and a lot of people, you hear people joking about, oh man, they must have been smoking something at Mattel when all that was going on, and maybe they were. I don't know. I'm not here to judge, but they were clearly having a fun time coming up with a lot of this crazy stuff. And even the wave that Ninjor was in, which I talked about a little bit with Clamp Champ on the previous episode, even though that was like a wave of figures that was kind of thrown together at the last minute, it's still some of the best figures in the line, oddly enough. And it goes to show what Nicholas Meyer often would say, which is that like art thrives on limitations. And I think when you got these guys together and said, okay, this wave, we've got this sorceress figure. She's going to be an all new sculpt, but the rest of them just kind of try to come up with as little stuff to mold as possible. You can do new heads and maybe a couple of new weapons, but for the most part, just try to reuse the stuff we already have. And they came up with Clamp Champ, King Randor, Ninjor, and Scareglow, which was, some of the coolest figures in the line. Honestly, I kind of feel like King Randor and Sorceress are figures that should have been made like way earlier. They just finally got around to them in the last year of the line. And like I said before, I kind of feel like having a black character in Masters of the Universe, a black human character. I don't mean like take Merman and paint him black and call him Stinkor. I mean like an African-American looking character. He's not actually African-American because he's from Eternia, so he's never even been to Africa or America. You know what I mean when I say that. But yeah, a black man as a Masters of the Universe character was well overdue by the time they got to that point. And I think it's still, like I said, I'm being charitable about this, and I'm saying that it's probably just because they were too busy coming up with cool monsters. They didn't come up with that many human characters in the first place. But, like I said, even Zodak, who's a character who's like Caucasian colored, he's not a human. He's got reptile arms and he's got no nose under his helmet. I mean, look at the way that helmet is sculpted. There's no nose under this thing. Look at that. You ain't gonna fit a nose under. Well, actually, the Origins version looks a little like they gave him a little more room, but the vintage one is a bit more flush. But yeah, Ninjor is a really cool figure, and I suggest you pick him up if you can get him. If you're a fan of Drago Man from the Classics line, he's definitely got a lot of Drago Man influence, and I could see them taking this figure and pretty much doing. They wouldn't even have to make any new parts; just do a straight up repaint of this, where he's like entirely red skinned, and call it Drago Man, and that would be pretty cool. I would buy the figure again if they did that. I honestly would. But that's it for Ninjor. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please make sure that you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Next episode, we're going to be taking a little bit of a break from the Turtles of Grayskull, but we will be coming back to them with the deluxe figures that I have to open up. And we will be opening up the Sketchbook series, original concept art He-Man, which I'm pretty excited about. I think it's pretty well known at this point that I'm a big fan of the Vicron character that the original Roger Sweet figure wound up getting turned into. And I have like a lot of my own fanon, my own headcanon about that character and how he works. And this is pretty much a Vicron figure since it is based on that original version. But they've taken it back to the original name. He's back to just being He-Man again. But Vicron is a He-Man as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, this is going to be the next one. And we'll talk a little bit more about Vicron when we get to that. But yeah, make sure you hit that like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. YouTube's likes it when I say like and subscribe, so I like to say like and subscribe. Leave a comment and let me know what you think about Ninjor, both this figure and the character in general. And what do you think about seeing him finally in his full dragon form that was hinted at for all those years? I think it's pretty cool. I'm really excited about that. I'm glad to have this guy in my collection. Thanks for watching. We will talk to you next time. Bye.